Rhode Island is the smallest state, but it holds a dense, concentrated weight of history. In the northern corner of the state, in the village of Harrisville, sits a farmhouse built in 1736. It is a simple structure, clapboard siding, a central chimney, 10 rooms. It looks idyllic. It looks innocent. But anyone who knows the history of the Arnold Estate knows that innocence died there a long time ago. Lucas Graves was a sound engineer. He didn't hunt ghosts with spirit boxes or EMF meters that lit up like Christmas trees. He hunted resonance. His theory was simple. Houses have a frequency. Old wood, stone foundations, and plaster absorb the energy of the events that happen within them. If you listen closely enough with the right equipment, you can hear the past. He had rented the farmhouse for 3 nights. The current owners had turned it into a business allowing paranormal investigations, but Lucas had paid extra for exclusivity. No guides, no tour groups, just him, the house, and his microphones. It was 10 p.m. on his first night. The house was silent, but it was a heavy silence. It felt like the air pressure was slightly higher inside than outside, pressing against his eardrums. Lucas set up his base of operations in the living room, the room where the Perron family had famously witnessed the spirit of a woman with a broken neck. He arranged a parabolic microphone pointing toward the hallway and placed several high-sensitivity contact mics on the floorboards and the walls. Session 1, Lucas spoke into his voice recorder. Ambient temperature is 60 degrees. No drafts. House is settled. He put on his noise-canceling headphones, plugging them directly into the mixer. He turned the gain up. The world amplified. He could hear the house breathing. The wood expanded and contracted with the cooling night air. He heard a mouse scratching in the walls 2 rooms away. He heard the wind brushing against the siding. And then he heard the flies. It started as a low buzz in the left ear cup. Zzz, zzz. Lucas frowned. It was late October. The flies should be dead. He took the headphones off and looked around. The room was empty. No insects. He put the headphones back on. The buzzing was louder now, sounding like a swarm was circling the microphone he had placed in the kitchen. Interference? He muttered, tweaking the dials. Then the buzzing stopped abruptly, replaced by a sound that made his stomach drop. It was the sound of a heavy, wet object being dragged across the floorboards in the room above him. Thump, drag. Thump, drag. Lucas looked up at the ceiling. That was the master bedroom. "Is someone there?" he called out, his voice shaking slightly. The dragging stopped. Lucas stared at the audio waveform on his laptop screen. It had spiked when he heard the noise. This wasn't in his head, it was physical. He decided to go upstairs. He took a handheld recorder and a flashlight. The stairs in the farmhouse were steep and narrow, a relic of the 1700s. Every step groaned under his weight. When he reached the landing, the smell hit him. It is the most common report of the real haunting of the Perron family. Not the sight of a ghost, but the smell. It smelled of rotting meat, stagnant swamp water, and dried blood. It was so potent, Lucas gagged, covering his nose with his sleeve. "Jesus," he whispered. He swept the flashlight beam across the hallway. The door to the master bedroom was slightly ajar. He pushed it open. The room was empty. The bed was made. The smell was strongest here, concentrated in the corner near the closet. Lucas pointed his recorder at the corner. "If there is an entity here, Bathsheba, I am not here to hurt you. I just want to listen." He watched the levels on the recorder. They remained flat. He lowered the device, disappointed. "Just old plumbing," he told himself. He turned to leave. As he stepped into the hallway, a sound erupted from the room he had just exited. It wasn't a whisper, it wasn't a drag, it was a slap, a loud, fleshy smack, like a hand striking skin. Lucas spun around. The room was still empty, but on the doorframe, right next to his head, a fresh, wet handprint began to materialize. It wasn't of water, it was condensation, forming the shape of a large, distorted hand with crooked fingers. And then, through his unplugged ears, without any amplification, he heard a woman's voice. It came from everywhere and nowhere. "Get out." It wasn't a scream, it was a statement of fact. Lucas backed away, his heart hammering against his ribs. He retreated down the stairs, retreating to the safety of his equipment. But as he sat back down in the living room, he realized something that made his blood run cold. He hadn't stopped recording on the main mixer downstairs. He looked at the laptop screen. During the time he was upstairs, the waveform on the living room microphone had gone crazy. It was a solid block of black noise. He rewound the file and pressed play. He expected to hear silence or maybe my own footsteps upstairs. Instead, the speakers blasted a cacophony of children screaming, dozens of them, screaming in agony, crying for their mothers, and underneath the screams, a low, rhythmic chanting in a language he didn't recognize. The house wasn't just haunted, it was a choir of the dead, and Lucas had just handed them a microphone.
By 2 a.m., the atmosphere in the house had shifted from ominous to oppressive. The air was thick, like walking through gelatin. Lucas felt a weight on his chest, a physical pressure that made it hard to take a deep breath. He knew he should leave. The evidence he had captured in the first hour was enough to make his career, but the obsession of the sound engineer kept him there. He needed to find the source. The screaming on the recording sounded distant, muffled. Sound travels up. "The basement," Lucas whispered. The cellar of the Arnold Estate is legendary. It has a dirt floor, stone walls that date back to the 1600s, older than the house itself, and a history of being the dark heart of the property. The Perron family hated it. The Warrens feared it. Lucas stood before the cellar door in the kitchen. The wood was scarred and dark. He opened it. The smell of rot billowed up, cool and damp. He descended the wooden stairs. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the rough stone walls and the packed dirt floor. It was freezing down here, easily 20 degrees colder than the kitchen. He set up a tripod in the center of the cellar. He attached a specialized microphone designed for infrasound, sounds below the range of human hearing, often associated with fear and paranormal activity. "I'm down here," Lucas said to the dark. "Show me what you are." He put his headphones back on. At first, there was only the low hum of the furnace, but then the infrasound mic began to pick up a rhythm. Thump, 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 thump. A heartbeat. But it was too slow. It beat once every 10 seconds, a massive, sluggish heart. He turned the gain up. Behind the heartbeat, he heard scratching. It sounded like fingernails digging into wood. It was coming from the far corner, behind an old wooden pallet. Lucas walked toward the sound, the flashlight trembling in his hand. He kicked the pallet aside. There was nothing there but the dirt floor. Suddenly, a sharp pain flared in his calf. "Ah!" Lucas cried out, jumping back. It felt like he had been stung by a hornet. He pulled up his pant leg. On his calf, a circular puncture wound was bleeding, and next to it, the skin was already turning black and blue, forming a bruise. But the bruise wasn't random. It was shaped like a mouth, a bite mark. "She bites," Lucas remembered the lore. Bathsheba Sherman is accused of sacrificing an infant to Satan by driving a knitting needle into the base of its skull. She denied it until her death, but the legend says she is eternally searching for the child, or perhaps looking for a new one to sacrifice. Lucas froze. "I don't have your baby." The breathing changed. It became a growl. "Liar." An invisible force slammed into Lucas's chest, throwing him backwards. He flew through the air and slammed against the stone foundation. The impact knocked the wind out of him. He gasped, trying to inhale, but the air in the basement had vanished. It was a vacuum. He clawed at his throat. He saw something in the dark, A faint gray luminosity began to form in the center of the room. It coalesced into a figure. It was a woman. Her head was tilted at an unnatural 90-degree angle, resting on her shoulder as if her neck had been snapped like a twig. Her face was gray and bloated, like a drowned corpse. Her eyes were empty black sockets. She was floating a few inches off the ground, drifting toward him. Lucas scrambled sideways, crawling on the dirt. He found the stairs. He hauled himself up, his ribs screaming in pain. He burst into the kitchen and slammed the cellar door shut, leaning his back against it. Bang! Something hit the door from the other side with the force of a battering ram. Bang! 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 The wood splintered, the latch rattled. Lucas ran. He ran into the living room to grab his laptop, his evidence. But the living room had changed. The furniture was stacked. The chairs, the table, the sofa, they were all piled in the center of the room in a precarious tower, defying gravity. And sitting on top of the pile, looking down at him, was a small porcelain doll that he hadn't seen before. The doll's head slowly rotated to face him. Lucas grabbed the laptop and the mixer. He didn't care about the cables. He yanked them, ripping the microphones off the walls. He ran for the front door. He grabbed the handle and twisted. It was locked. He fumbled with the deadbolt. It wouldn't move. It felt welded shut. "Let me out!" Lucas screamed. Behind him, the dragging sound returned. Thump, drag, thump, drag. Coming from the kitchen. Coming for him. Lucas realized the door wasn't going to open. The house was sealing itself. He ran to the window, intending to smash it with the heavy audio mixer. He swung the metal box against the glass. Clang! The glass didn't break. It didn't even crack. It sounded like he had hit a sheet of solid steel. No, no, no! Lucas hyperventilated. He backed into the corner of the room, clutching the mixer like a shield. The dragging sound stopped at the entryway to the living room. The air grew cold, so cold that frost began to web across the unbreakable windows. Lucas looked at the reflection in the window glass. He saw himself huddled in the corner, but behind his reflection, standing just over his shoulder, was the woman with the broken neck. She wasn't in the room with him. She was only in the reflection. Lucas squeezed his eyes shut. "You aren't real. You are residual energy. You are a frequency." He felt a hand on his shoulder. It was ice cold. "Look at me," the voice whispered. Lucas didn't want to, but his body betrayed him. His head turned slowly, against his will. He opened his eyes. She was there, flesh and blood, rotting and gray. Her face was inches from his. The smell of necrotizing meat was overwhelming. She didn't scream. She smiled. Her teeth were black and jagged. She reached out with a crooked finger and touched the center of his forehead. "Empty," she hissed. "A vessel." Lucas felt a sensation like hot oil being poured into his brain. His vision went white. He wasn't in the living room anymore. He was seeing flashes of the past. He saw a woman hanging from a tree in the backyard, her body swaying in the wind. He saw a child crying in the cellar as the stone walls closed in. He saw the Perron family huddled in fear as beds levitated. He felt the rage of the land. It wasn't just Bathsheba. It was the land itself, cursed by war, by murder, by suicide. It was a battery of pain, and it needed to discharge. Lucas opened his mouth to scream, but the sound that came out wasn't his. It was a guttural, multi-tonal roar. He felt his muscles contracting, his back arched violently. He was being lifted. His feet left the floor. He hovered in the center of the living room, arms spread wide, head thrown back. The audio equipment on the floor began to screech. Feedback loops wailed through the speakers, escalating in pitch until the glass of the windows finally shattered inward, showering the room in shards. The pain was unbearable. He felt like his bones were being rearranged. He felt pressure on his neck, a twisting motion. "She wants to break me," he realized. "She wants to snap my neck like hers." He couldn't fight her physically. She was gravity. She was physics.
But he was a sound engineer. He knew how to cancel noise. Phase cancellation. If you play the exact inverse frequency of a sound wave, it creates silence. Lucas focused on the roar inside his head. He focused on the hate, and in his mind he projected the opposite. He thought of silence. He thought of peace. He thought of a blank tape's empty static hiss. He visualized a wall of white noise pushing the entity out. The entity shrieked, a sound of pure frustration. Lucas dropped. He hit the floor hard, crashing onto the broken glass. The pressure in his head vanished. The cold lifted instantly. He gasped, sucking in air that finally contained oxygen. The front door swung open with a slow, mournful creak. Lucas didn't wait to check his gear. He didn't look back. He grabbed his laptop, scrambled to his feet, and bolted out the door. He sprinted to his car, threw the laptop in the passenger seat, and peeled out of the driveway, gravel spraying against the ancient siding of the farmhouse. He drove for 20 miles before he stopped shaking. Lucas Graves never returned to Rhode Island. He quit his job as a sound engineer. He couldn't handle the job anymore. He couldn't handle the silence. Because for Lucas, true silence no longer existed. Every time he put on a pair of noise-canceling headphones, every time he entered a quiet room, he heard it. A faint, low-frequency buzzing. The sound of flies. He kept the recording from that night. He never published it. He keeps it on a hard drive in a safe deposit box. Sometimes when he has had too much to drink, he thinks about destroying it, but he can't, because he knows the truth about the Conjuring House. It isn't haunted by ghosts that are trapped there. It is a broadcasting station. And on the recording, right at the end, after he ran out of the house, the microphone in the living room picked up one last sound before the battery died. It was the sound of the front door swinging open with a slow, mournful creak. And then a woman's voice, clear as a bell, humming a lullaby. Rock-a-bye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall, and down will come baby, cradle and all. The house is waiting. It's always recording, and it's always listening for the next guest.